Have you ever wondered, why do some people choose to live alone, even when they could easily have company? Why do they prefer silence over conversation and solitude over crowds? Psychologists say it's not always about sadness, it's about clarity. Some people don't fear loneliness, they fear losing themselves in noise. For them, living alone is a conscious choice, a way to connect more deeply with their thoughts, their dreams, and their inner peace. They find comfort in quiet mornings, in late-night reflection, and in the freedom to live by their own rhythm. These individuals are often introverts, thinkers, and self-observers. They recharge their energy in solitude, not in social gatherings. Where others see emptiness, they see space, a space to breathe, to heal, and to grow. But there's another side too. Some people turn to solitude after they've been hurt. A broken relationship, betrayal, or years of emotional chaos push them toward peace. They realize that being alone is not the worst thing. Being surrounded by the wrong people is. So they choose distance over drama, quiet over conflict, peace over pressure. They start rebuilding their world, not outside, but inside, and slowly they learn that solitude is not isolation. It's freedom. Freedom to think, to feel, and to live without constantly being watched or judged. Such people may seem distant or mysterious, but deep inside, they are on a powerful journey. A journey of self-discovery, self-control, and silent strength. Because sometimes, choosing to live alone isn't about rejecting others. It's about finally choosing yourself. When a person starts living alone, the first thing they notice is silence. No voices in the background, no laughter, no footsteps, just silence. At first, this silence feels peaceful, almost healing. You finally get to hear your own thoughts clearly. You eat when you want. You rest when you want. And for a moment, life feels simple. But after a few weeks, that same silence starts to speak back. The ticking clock feels louder. The nights feel longer. You start missing the warmth of a good morning, or someone asking, "How was your day?" This is when the real psychology begins. Your mind starts traveling inward. You begin to think more deeply about your past, your regrets, your choices, your dreams. You start having long conversations with yourself. Psychologists call this introspective solitude, a stage where you don't just live alone. You begin to understand yourself. You discover your fears. You understand your emotions more clearly. And for many people, this is the moment of transformation. They become emotionally intelligent. They learn to calm themselves. They learn to be their own friend. They learn that peace doesn't come from others. It begins within. But solitude has a fragile side too. If this phase continues without any emotional connection, even small ones, it can slowly turn into chronic loneliness. And loneliness is not just an emotion, it's a silent disease. It can affect your sleep, your confidence, your focus, and even your heart health. You start feeling detached from the world, like you're living behind invisible glass. That's why psychologists say, living alone can either make you emotionally stronger or emotionally empty, depending on how you use your solitude. If you use it to grow, reflect, and create, it becomes power. But if you use it to escape pain, it becomes a cage. So the emotional impact of living alone is not black or white. It's a deep ocean of feelings, where peace and pain live side by side. When you live alone for a long time, something begins to change, not just in your heart, but deep inside your brain. Neuroscientists have discovered that solitude doesn't just affect how you feel, it actually rewires your brain. When you spend time alone, your mind becomes more active in areas related to creativity, memory, and self-reflection. This is why many artists, writers, and inventors throughout history, like Nikola Tesla, Isaac Newton, and Emily Dickinson, preferred solitude. Because silence gives the brain something that noise never can: space to think freely. When you're alone, your brain produces more dopamine during activities that bring satisfaction, like reading, painting, writing, or simply daydreaming. That's the brain's reward chemical, the one that tells you, this feels good, do more of it. Over time, solitude can also enhance neural connections that improve focus and creativity. You start seeing patterns, ideas, and emotions that others might miss. Your brain becomes more efficient at processing complex thoughts because it's not distracted by constant conversation or social noise. But there's a darker side too. When isolation continues for too long and emotional connection fades away, the brain's reward system starts to weaken. The same things that once made you happy, music, food, small joys, don't feel as rewarding anymore. Psychologists call this emotional blunting, when your brain stops reacting to pleasure because it's not receiving enough social stimulation. In long periods of solitude, the amygdala, the part of the brain that handles emotions like fear and anxiety, can become more sensitive. That's why some people who live alone for too long start feeling uneasy in crowds or anxious in social situations. So solitude can transform your brain in two directions. It can make you wiser, more creative, and deeply self-aware. Or it can slowly isolate you from the world that gives life its color. The secret lies in balance. Silence can heal the mind, but too much silence can drown it. Living alone isn't always a weakness. Sometimes it's the beginning of true strength. When you live alone, you become your own protector, your own guide, and your own support system. There's no one to remind you to wake up, no one to push you to work, so you learn something powerful: self-discipline. You start relying on yourself for motivation, for comfort, and for courage. You learn to cook, to manage your bills, to fix broken things, not because someone told you to, but because life demanded it. People who live alone often become resourceful. They find creative ways to solve problems and keep themselves going. They learn that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the silence of responsibility. But there's another strength hidden even deeper: emotional independence. When you live alone, you begin to realize that happiness is not something others hand to you. It's something you build quietly from within. You learn to face your emotions head on. You sit with your sadness instead of running away from it. You handle your bad days without leaning on anyone. And that's how emotional muscles are built. Psychologists say people who live alone tend to have a stronger sense of identity. They know what they like, what they dislike, and what truly matters to them. They don't seek constant approval. They live by their own truth. And perhaps that's the greatest strength of all: the courage to be yourself, even when no one else is watching. Because solitude doesn't break you, it builds you. It shapes your patience, your focus, and your resilience. People who live alone may look quiet from the outside, but inside them lives a storm of strength, discipline, and deep self-knowledge, the kind that only silence can teach. Solitude can be beautiful, but when peace turns into emptiness, it becomes something darker: loneliness. At first, being alone feels like freedom. No pressure, no expectations, no noise. But slowly, when days turn into months, you start to feel something missing. Not outside, but deep inside. You wake up and there's no voice to greet you. You eat in silence. You celebrate your victories alone. And over time, the silence that once felt peaceful starts to feel heavy. Psychologists call this phase emotional withdrawal, when a person begins to pull away, not only from people, but also from their own emotions. You stop calling friends. You stop sharing your thoughts. You begin to live entirely inside your head. At first, it feels safe. But soon, it becomes a trap. The human brain is wired for connection, and without it, it begins to lose balance. Even short, simple interactions, a smile, a handshake, a small talk, release chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin that keep our emotions healthy. But when those connections disappear, Your mind starts craving something it can't name. And that's when loneliness truly begins. You might scroll through your phone just to feel connected. You might watch people on social media and wonder why their lives seem full while yours feels quiet. That's not weakness. That's your brain asking for human warmth. Prolonged loneliness can lead to anxiety, overthinking, and emotional numbness. You stop expecting happiness and start just surviving the days. That's why psychologists say, even people who live alone must stay connected in small ways. A walk outside, a friendly chat, a quick call, a small act of kindness. Because the cure for loneliness isn't company, it's connection. And without it, solitude turns from a place of peace into a prison of silence. So what does it really mean to live alone? It's not about isolation. It's about transformation. Living alone doesn't mean you've lost something. It means you're learning something. You're learning how to sit with your thoughts. You're learning to love your own company. You're learning to find peace not in noise, but in silence. It's not always easy. There are nights when loneliness feels heavier than the world. There are mornings when you question if anyone remembers you. But slowly, something begins to change. You start realizing that you are stronger than you thought. You find beauty in small things: the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet hum of life. You begin to understand that solitude isn't emptiness, it's space. Space for your mind to breathe, for your soul to heal, and for your true self to grow. And when you finally learn to be happy alone, you become unstoppable. Because now, your peace no longer depends on anyone. Your happiness no longer needs validation. You have become whole, all by yourself. So, if you live alone, don't let anyone make you feel small for it. You're walking a path that few dare to walk. The path of self-discovery, inner strength, and quiet power. In the end, the hidden psychology of people who live alone is not about loneliness. It's about liberation, the freedom to be yourself completely, even in silence.